Welcome back to another edition of the Creator Spotlight. Today I have Avin Kline. He is the CEO of Lucid Agency. Welcome, Avin. How are you doing today?
Thanks, man. I'm doing great. I'm really excited to be here. I've been seeing your content for quite a while, and we've touched base here and there, but good to be here, and also really good to catch up with you directly because we haven't actually caught up directly yet.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been interesting, meeting people on LinkedIn when you produce content all the time and you interact with people via comments or even direct
Right?
messages, and then you feel like you know someone very well, but then you haven't actually met them on video or in person. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
So you've had a bit of a journey from founding the success agency to becoming a leader in what you guys deem as the conscious compounds industry, so psychedelics, mushrooms, and cannabis and CBD. But what initially drew you to that industry, and how did it feel transitioning from the traditional marketing to obviously this very specialized niche?
Yeah, good question. So, the industry was never anything that I was really into for, until really the last few years. As you mentioned, I've been in the agency space for actually almost 2 decades, and it's kind of where I started when I first came, started my career was in the agency space, and really, it's really an area that I became really great at. And it's funny. So a few years ago, my best friend, Aaron Nazbish, and I know you know him, I've interviewed him before, I think. Him and I, we would stay in touch, travel together. We had a weekly call where we just catch up, talk about goals and what's going on. And this is a space he's been into, like that conscious compounds, like you say, the cannabis, psychedelics, things like that, something he's been really passionate about. And just at that time, he kind of cracked the code, as we speak, when it comes to being able to advertise these products at scale at that time on Facebook. And the agency was just starting to take off. And it's funny, that year I had I still have a written mission statement. At the time it was to, my reason to exist is to help those I love and work with to close the gap between their potential and current reality. And I've always had a thing where I don't work with friends. I have plenty of people that I work with that become friends. But if they're actually a great friend, I've not worked with them. I don't work with them because I value that relationship so much. And so through the years, never wanted to work with Aaron, just want to keep him as a good friend. But at that pivotal time, I know, hey, is he going to make this successful without me? Yeah, most likely. Are his chances of making this a massive success greater if I'm involved? Like, yes. And so I decided to get involved, and we partnered up Lucid, that he had already founded and really cracked the code on. And the rest is history. And, since then, we've been leading the space for a few years now.
Yeah, so you mentioned connecting with Aaron and getting into Lucid, and prior to Lucid, you were helping to build and scale eScale, which was ultimately
Yep,
acquired by Lucid.
that's
So
right.
after that happened, what was the most surprising and or rewarding lesson that you learned, along the journey getting into this space?
Yeah. So, when it comes to agency space, I will say I'm really good in the agency space. I know how to run an agency. And at the end of the day, what's an agency good for? An agency is basically good for doing things more efficiently and effectively for a brand or a company than they can do themselves. That's what an agency comes down to. And so it's really human resources. Yes, knowing what you do and innovating in the actual product you sell. But it's human resources, managing people, and knowing, again, how to do things more efficiently and effectively than a company can do themselves. And so I've been in that space, for, like I say, almost 2 decades. I'm really good at it. One thing when it comes to, as you know, and you mentioned, like at Lucid, we do, conscious compounds. Primarily right now, that ends up being cannabis space and a lot of hemp products. In the future, psychedelics and other areas. But being like in that niche and being like a true leader in this space, it's just so much more fun. Like, it's fun for a couple of reasons. One, it's really fun, like, to truly be the best in the world at something. Like, it's kind of funny, but like when it comes to being an advertising agency for that space, we're literally the best in the world. I'm not saying there's no other good agencies and freelancers and people like that who do great work, and for sure. But when it comes to being the best in the world, like, we're literally the best in the world. And so that's kind of fun because you're the leaders. People come to you for good reason. And then it's also fun to really just hone your craft and be great at something. Like, there's so much that we don't touch and we don't do because it's not something we can be great at. But like, to be able to focus on something that you can truly be great at is a lot of fun. And before Lucid, the agencies had started, founded, very successful, but a little more generalist. And to really be the leaders in the space is just a lot more fun for us.
Yeah, so you mentioned being leaders in the space, and obviously I believe you guys are somewhere between 80 to 90% of the advertising spend in this space. I don't know who said this originally, but the quote is, "It gets lonely at the top." From there and sticking with the landscape's always evolving and strategies are constantly changing. How have you, as leaders in the space, been effective in overcoming the constant changes and then regulatory hurdles and things like that?
Yeah, I would say it's something that, by the way, if I say investors, we actually call our clients investors.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes if I say investors, it'll be a slip there. And the reason we call them investors is just across the board, like for a similar reason that that Disney, they might call the customers guests or their employees cast members. Just when we
Mm-hmm.
call our clients investors, no matter where we are in the team, and we have about 55, 60 people, full-time people on our team. If it's a designer, coder, or whoever it might be, when they're thinking of an investor, they think, hey, I need to design or edit this ad to bring a return for this investor. Not like I
Mm-hmm.
have some client that needs to spend some money. But anyway, when I sometimes we'll talk to investors, we'll tell them, especially when it comes to, like you alluded to, the challenges in the hemp and cannabis space and with advertising, especially on on paid social advertising. The key thing is, what I won't tell them is, hey, we've got like this easy button, or we've got this direct line where all we gotta do is tap this button and we don't have any challenges. Like the clear thing is, at our agency, we experience challenges literally every day. I just got out of our daily stand up, which is usually about a 25-minute call with all 50 to 60 or so team members, and going through, the blocks and the challenges for the day. And just like every other day, we have these challenges. Ads get rejected, pages get disabled, all these types of things happen. But what we're great at is knowing how to get through them. It's not like, shoot, we had this thing come up, or this page got disabled, or this happens. Like, hey, that's just standard out for us. We know that happens. We know how to get through it. We know to have backups on backups. And kind of tell clients it's similar to, like, if we're a guide taking you up a mountain. Sometimes if you're a mountain hiker or climber, the mountain's not the same every time. Sometimes there's weather and you have to go this way versus that way. Sometimes a tree falls here and you have to choose a new route. So we're going to get you up to the mountain. Sometimes it'll be the same path we've always taken. Sometimes it'll be this brand new challenge. But we're like kind of that old elder guide that knows what they're doing, that you can trust. Like, hey, we don't know for sure what challenge we're going to experience, but what we're really great is getting it past those challenges. So we're going to get you to up that mountain. But then also too, like sometimes sometimes there's not a ton of times, but a few times where a client will, I'll say, they graduate. I won't name names right now, but like we've got some major players in this space that I respect a lot, and we help them get we help them get from like minimal revenue, minimal ad spend to insane revenue, insane ad spend. And then they kind of graduated and they can do it, themselves. Now they've got massive team and all of that kind of stuff. And so, but we're still friends. We still cheer them on. And so not only are we kind of leading the people that are working with us now, we're also leading and supporting the people who kind of graduated and can do it on their own in the future.
I love that approach. Calling them investors. It's a very intentional word choice, and words do matter. It's very similar to my full-time job. I work for a recruiting agency, and we are very intentional about calling our clients partners. They're partners.
Nice, yeah.
Client partners or just partners. And because it is, a give and take. You guys are, trying to get ROI for your investors. We are trying to partner deeply with
right.
Client partners as well, to be an extension of their brand. So, and I also love it around, graduating them out of needing you guys, because they've built such a good thing. So, I kind of want to shift gears here a little bit and talk a little bit more broadly around the advertising agency, or not agency, advertising industry as a whole. So obviously that is also a very constantly evolving and changing industry in its own right. So what are some trends that are happening right now or that are emerging right now that you think might be the next wave in advertising as a whole? And then maybe how does that parlay into success specifically within the conscious compounds space?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say a lot of things are different and a lot of things, are the same. Like, for example, when it comes to what's different, we hear a lot about, we'll just talk about Facebook for now, but it's similar with the other platforms. They're getting so much smarter and smarter and smarter via AI and other methods, to where one of the key things that's changed is a lot of the day-to-day and minute-to-minute, we'll say, media buying is done by Facebook themselves. Now, I'm not saying that having a media buyer is important. Like on our team, each of our pods or many teams have media buyers. But it's like, for example, a number of years ago, we would go towards a very targeted audience that we would want Facebook to show our ads to. Now, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, we kind of keep it open to Facebook. And Facebook's so smart to figure out, hey, who's the best audience for us to serve these ads to? So a lot of that has changed to where instead of really pulling all of these levers inside of the ad account, we really want to open things up to Facebook to let Facebook determine who to show the ad to, when, that type of thing, when to show what type of ad. But what is kind of changed in that regard is how important creative is. And when I say creative, it's basically just the ad. What does the user see? What does that person see on the ad? And that's where I say that's changed and not changed. That's been, the case for many decades. But the creative is so important. And so it's less important like these kind of levers that we used to pull inside the ad account. And now it's, hey, what's the creative that we're showing to the audience? So what's the actual ad? What's the offer? Now, choosing that product is so important. It's so interesting. I just heard again on this data stand up today that this brand was just not getting traction. We're continuing testing things. And then we said, hey, let's focus on this product over here. Boom. And we're getting massive traction. And so sometimes I would say, hey, it's a creative, it's a landing page, and it's the offer. Those are the three primary things when it comes to what's working well for advertising. Again, a lot of those have changed, and then a lot of the things have been the same for decades. Maybe not landing pages, but a lot of it's been the same. So again, the creative, what creative do we need to position this well? And we can't sometimes we want to just run one creative or one type of creative and then, assume it's going to hit. A lot of times we have to test lots of different variations, lots of different angles, et cetera. And then, yes, the landing page, making sure that landing page and the actual customer journey after they land on the site is flawless. When I say flawless, I mean standard and on brand. Flawless doesn't mean sexy. Flawless doesn't mean, unique and funky. Flawless really means the opposite. It means standard, what people are used to, but on brand. But then, like I say, the offer. What product are we actually focusing on? What's the pricing? What's the quantity? What's all of that with the offer? And keeping in mind that you might have a best-selling product on the website, but that product might not be the best lead-in for a customer. So what product should we actually position to acquire a new customer? And so I would say, like, to answer your question again, what's changed is less media buying and more focus on creative, when to scale and how to scale, landing pages, things like that. And then also some fun stuff that, that we're exploring, that we're doing really well with at Breeze and other places with TikTok Shop. TikTok Shop is very interesting. It's ever changing daily, but I think when it comes to wellness products, wellness CPG, TikTok Shop has a ton of opportunity. Now, when it comes to hemp and cannabis, we really can't advertise anything like that on TikTok, even if even if we're very careful, we just really can't advertise anything like that. But what we can is we know, or if you've been following like Breeze, for example, at Breeze, we have our Lion's Mane only product that we advertise on TikTok Shop very effectively. We just can't advertise anything with hemp, cannabis, THC in there.
Yeah. And, you mentioned earlier that you guys do a daily stand-up, and a lot of your team at Lucid is remote. And, this is kind of an ongoing conversation just within the world of work as a whole is, remote, return to office, and a hybrid schedule and things like that. And, one of the main drivers to wanting to be in the office is building that, team culture and having a strong culture. Obviously, like I said, Lucid and Breeze are both fully remote settings as far as I know. Is that correct?
Yep, that's true. Yep.
So for leaders and founders that are looking to create cohesive teams while working remotely, what's a piece of advice that you'd give based off of your experiences leading Lucid?
Yeah, so I would say if it's one thing when it comes to remote, it's remote first. And so what do I mean by that? A couple things. One is I think that being fully remote is much easier than being partially remote. Partially remote actually does get hard in my opinion, because inevitably when you've got 20%, 30%, 50% of people in an office and the rest outside the office, no matter what, it's going to be very easy for dialogue, discussions, and everything to happen in one room that don't get to everyone else. Like, think of that classic, 5 people are sitting around a boardroom table and one person's on speaker on this, weird speaker in the middle. Like, you've got that, what did he say? And then you've got people yelling into a speaker. It's just awkward. It's weird. You've got stuff that, there's things they don't pick up on. And so no matter what, I say remote first. And so what does that mean? So if you are hybrid, if you have some people in an office and some people are not, you use remote first channels. So that means, like, we use Slack, you use whatever you use, but communication goes in Slack, not communicating non-remote or physically here for some stuff, not stuff in Slack. Or like, for example, getting onto a Zoom or Google Meet or whatever, we use Google Meet. If you have 3 people in an office and 8 people out, the way I look at it, I don't even like those 3 people in an office to be in one room. I like each of those to be individually on the same computer, just like everyone else. Because when all communication happens remotely, then no one's at a disadvantage. Nothing gets lost. Nothing's like, oh yeah, we decided that in the room on Tuesday. Sorry, you weren't there. Like, that stuff is not only annoying, it breaks down communication and makes remote fail. So remote first, even if you are hybrid. And then after that, as a remote team is just have standards and structure for how you do things. Two things that come to mind. You mentioned that daily stand up. We have a daily stand up. For us, it's Monday through Thursday. Fridays, I love Fridays. We call it Deep Work Friday. That's where meetings are banned. We don't have meetings on Friday unless there's something better be on fire for there to be a meeting on a Friday. Otherwise, that's a day that, hey, for me, I love to get lost in work. I'm not looking at the schedule. Right now I'm looking at my clock and it's counting down by the seconds because you and I both have something wrong with this, I'm sure. But on Fridays, I have nothing. I'm just, getting lost in work, and all of our team members do that too. But every other day, Monday through Thursday, we have a daily stand-up. That's where all team members over at Lucid, like I said, it's about 55 or so full-time team members. We all get on there. We all go through down. Literally every single person on the team speaks. And it usually takes like 15 to 20 minutes. And that one rhythm keeps us all dialed in. It keeps us all connected. We know what's going on, things like that. And then I would say just other structures. One thing that comes to mind is I mentioned Slack. So if you use Slack, all communication should happen in Slack. It's not like some should happen in Slack, some should be via SMS, some stuff via WhatsApp. That breaks down, and inevitably that means that some people are in the know. And at Lucid, we have a principle of transparency and communication. That means we organize our channels very intentionally in Slack, and that if you want to talk about Netflix, that's fine a DM. If you want to talk about work, never a DM. It always is in the appropriate channel, because as a remote team, we have transparency and communication. That way you don't have two people working on something over here, three people working on the same thing over here, and them not knowing it. And, we have wasted work. So transparency and communication for a remote team, I think, is very important too.
I love that. And the Deep Work Friday, or No Meeting Friday, I like that as well. I think you,
Yeah.
I'm not sure how recently it was, but you made a post about meetings in general on LinkedIn, and structuring them and things like that. So you want to share a little bit about your philosophy on meetings?
Yeah. So as we all know, meetings, a lot of us have a love-hate relationship with meetings. They're critical, but often used very unwisely. So the first thing I would say is a lot of us default to, like, when something's not going right or something needs to change, we default to a meeting. Like, literally the first thing we think about is, oh, we should get in the room. It's so default that we don't even question that. Like, hey, we should set up a meeting and talk about this. And yes, a meeting is oftentimes a tool in the toolkit to make change happen or solve challenges or to be more effective. But when it's like the first thing we do, a lot of times it's the only thing we do. So we just jump on something, jump into a meeting, we talk about it, and a lot of times we feel better, which is even worse because we think we've solved the challenge. And so we feel better, feel good about it, and then change doesn't happen. And so one is, yes, meetings being the default. I'm a big fan of writing things up. I love the guys over at Basecamp, Jason Fried and David, I forget how you pronounce his last name, but those guys have been thought leaders in the space for a long time, I think. And, they talk about write it down, don't chat it up. And so, like, write things down. And what I prefer for our team, hey, if we're going to get to a meeting, do a write-up first. Write down our thoughts, write down the challenge. Let's make it really clear. Write down your position, and let's do a write-up first, because what that does is, first, it helps you know what you think. A lot of times we just get in a meeting, most of the time, so the person that called the meeting can figure out what they think, rather than taking some time to write it down and figure out what you think. And then if we all can just read that before we get into a meeting, then we're like 25 minutes ahead of the game. And then we can actually spend
Correct.
5 or 10 minutes questioning it, deciding on it, things like that. So not making the meeting the first thing or only thing we do, making sure we're conscious about the meeting. What is our objective here? Is our objective to decide on something? Is our objective to actually brainstorm something? What is our actual objective here of this meeting? Like, being conscious about it. And then I'm a big fan of write-ups, and especially as a remote team too, when the only communication happens in a meeting, even when you have like Fireflies or Otter or whatever that's recording meetings, people aren't going to get the information from that meeting. It's going to just happen in silos. Whereas if there's write-ups, memos sound so old school, but we do memos at Lucid. So if I spend 20 minutes to do a proper memo, we use Notion to house all of this, then all 55 people can be brought up to speed. Versus if I jump into a meeting just with 2 members of our leadership team, 2 people are brought up to speed. There's a lot of benefit to actually writing things out, fleshing things out in a transparent way that the whole team can see.
I love that. And so I'm going to shift gears here again and stick kind of with your social media a bit. And
Yeah.
one of the big things that you share a lot about on most platforms, but it seems to be more prevalent on Instagram is, you're very much a fitness enthusiast, a pretty
I
big
don't think
athlete.
LinkedIn wants to see pictures with my shirt off yet. I don't know. So usually that happens only on Instagram.
That's fair. So obviously, again, you're very fitness oriented, athlete focused, and how has that the mindset to do all the different events that you do and groups and things like that. How's that shaped your leadership style, and then ultimately how's that affect the rest of the company as well?
Yeah, good question. I'd say when it comes to fitness and athletics and working out, I'm 39 now. I've been working out 3 to 5 times a week since I was like 15, and maybe probably 6 months off in the last however many years that is. And so, it's a big part of my life. I would say when it comes to running a business, it's kind of interesting. A lot of people would think that I'd be really, really busy, and I'm busy, and I try and be effective. But I also spend what was it? I spend about 10 hours a week working out. And some people would be like, "That's just for one." You think, "Hey, that's just vain or just selfish, etc." Like when I spend that time working out, like literally for me personally, it's as much about business as anything else because that's when I'm making decisions. When I go for a run, like that's when I'm processing. That's when I'm just taking all this stuff that's happening and I'm like processing. And so much better than just sitting in front of the computer. I'm processing, I'm thinking about what I think, all of that kind of stuff. I'm just processing. And for me, like when I'm lifting weights, like in between sets, I'm making decisions. I literally have a notepad going and I'm like coming back between sets and I'm jotting down notes to follow up on, or I'm making decisions. Like, cause sometimes, the decisions I have to make is do we fire this person or not? Do we hire this person or not? Do we take on this client or do we decide not to? Like, and sometimes it's pretty big decisions. And for me, when I'm like lifting weights or doing some sort of activity, it just helps me to. I'll make decisions so much better then than sitting behind the computer. And so part of it's for my own sanity, part of it's for my like literally to process and make decisions. It also keeps it low anxiety. Like I don't generally live very stressed or anxious, but I tell you what, if it's a day or two I can't work out, like my wife will say, "Hey, you should go for a workout," because I'm not usually the most fun to be around if I miss my workout that day. So a lot of it's for that as well. Now, the carryover, I would say like consistency, like that's more than anything. The consistency of exercising and working out and like the athletics. It's so important in athletics and it's so important in business. And so I would say that's one of the crossovers for sure. And then the fun thing too in our industry, like in the hemp and cannabis and conscious compounds industry,
Hmm.
it's in my opinion the ones that are doing, some of them are just like kind of the stoner side, which is cool. There's nothing wrong with that. But like the stoner side. The other side is a little bit more wellness centric. And again, both of those sides are fine. But it's fun too, as I've been able to go to events and conferences. Like one of my favorite events I go to, it's actually hosted by a friend called Eric. His name's Eric Hinman. He looks like one of the fittest guys on the planet. But he hosts these events that I go to, and instead of like sitting in a boardroom in stuffy clothes and a whiteboard, we're sitting in a sauna or we're taking ice baths or we're meeting each other while we're going on a run or a hike. Like those are the kind of events I love, and those are the opportunities I've had to connect with some of the great leaders in the space and in kind of the adjacent spaces like general wellness. And so yeah, I would say all that merged together to have athletics be such a big part of my life.
Yeah, the consistency for me personally, I have been slacking recently, but I've had a couple of stretches where I've gone like 110, 120 days
Nice.
straight of some sort of workout, whether that be I ran 2 miles and that was it, or I had a more intense workout.
Nice.
And there's something really compelling about being consistent at anything, whether that be content creation, you're posting every single day for 2 years straight, or working out every single day. That consistency, because once you can do it with one thing, you can reframe it for anything else. Same thing with challenges. It's you tackle some big hurdle, you can do it for, and you have that mindset for that next hurdle that you want to tackle.
Yeah.
And if anyone says, that's crazy, but like, well, I already achieved this other thing, so why can't I do this other big thing? So
100%.
that consistency is huge. So I definitely see those
Yeah.
parallels.
Yeah. I'm curious. I see the Peloton back there. You ever jump on that?
That is actually my sister's. I'm sitting in my sister's house right now,
Okay,
so
gotcha.
I have not hopped on that before. But
I tell
I
you
have been
what.
I have been on a Peloton before
Yeah.
though.
I know the Wall Street doesn't love Peloton right now, but I think it's great. I think I'm always amazed that I don't like working out like in a stuff in a small apartment. And sometimes like where I stay, actually where I stay when I'm in Boulder, Colorado, it's kind of a small apartment. Usually I like the last thing I want to do is like try and do some big workout in here. But when I jump on the Peloton in there, like I get the hardest workout in the smallest space. It can be a stuffy, dark room, and I'm just super impressed with Peloton. And I know it's been around for a long time, but I'm impressed with the type of workout you can get on one of them.
Sure. I worked out. My dad has a Peloton, so I've stayed with him
Yeah,
before, and I used it. It's intense. It's a lot of work.
yeah. It gets you moving. It gets you like fired up for sure.
Absolutely. So I always like to end in these conversations with, how can my readers and subscribers on YouTube that maybe they're inspired or they want to, possibly work with Lucid or just your journey in general, how can they find you? How can they support you? Or what's the best way to connect and get involved?
Yeah, you bet. Well, before I answer that I just want to say, Lars, that the content that you've been putting out on your newsletter, on LinkedIn, and everything else, like it's super valuable. And when I see it, a lot of times I'll see things and I'll just automatically know the position and the point of view they're taking because it's very promotional, which is fine. But when I see your content, I think it's phenomenal. I think uh, it's authoritative, and it's authoritative because you seem to just try and put what's helpful and truthful out there. So anyway, I just really value the content, and
Thank you.
I'm sure people are already doubting your content, but if not, I think they should be. But as far as connecting with myself, LinkedIn or Instagram, LinkedIn, if you want to hear me talk more about some of the things we talked about here when it comes to remote. Instagram, if every once in a while you see a picture of me with my shirt off, but usually not. But it's more athletics and more just life. Also traveling the world with my wife and kids. I have two young kids. They're 6 and 7. Just to kind of put in perspective, my 7-year old has been to I think 32 countries, and so we get around, and so we like to
Awesome.
travel and have a good time while we're working. Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram. If you want to learn about Lucid, connect with me on LinkedIn and sending me a message is a good way. If there might be an opportunity for us to work together, I'll probably loop you in with our head of growth or talk to you directly. And also, if you just want a little bit of help or pointers in the industry, talk to us. The nice thing about being leaders in the industry, we don't need or try to hard sell. If we can add some value to you now, maybe you'll work with us a year or two from now, maybe not, but that's okay. So happy to help anybody in the space.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for joining me today. And I really appreciate all the kind words as well. The support is awesome. So I've definitely felt that from the Lucid team as well as the Breeze team overall. So
Awesome.
thank you for all that. And until next time, guys, cheers.
All right. See you.